Hey, welcome back. This is part two of Intro to Animate. So far we've covered setup and some of our tools. So let's get into a little bit more. We just finished up with the rectangle tool and how to adjust, how to select with your selection tool and change that. So you remember you can select once to select one part of it, like the fill, double click, and you'll see that it highlights everything, and you can adjust the stroke and style of how that's done here as well. Um, Now with the subselection tool, if I go and select this with the subselection tool, you'll see that it has kind of a border with some transform controls here. If I go and drag these, I can reshape this and shape it how I want to. So there's different ways that you can use these selection tools. Transform tool, again, since this is our actual first shape that we're dealing with, I can take this and I can scale this how I want to, but you'll notice that it's only scaling the part that I've selected. So if you wanted to scale something down to create like a border or whatever you need it for, you can do that. If you wanted to transform the whole thing, make sure you double click so it's all selected, and then you can scale everything up as you see fit. You can also move it around using this tool, so that's pretty handy. Your lasso tool works like lasso tool in most other programs. It will select only portions of an object if that is all you have selected. So if you wanted to get rid of something or adjust something, you can delete a chunk of it, or you can select something and then go to a transform tool and move that chunk out somewhere else. And you'll see that when you separate objects in Animate, you just notice that it has doesn't quite cut off where you want it to. And that's because of the style of art that we create here. You notice if I go back to this rectangle or portion of the rectangle that we have left, you'll have what's called a join or a cap. And right here you can select rounded objects or squared objects, or you can cap it off where there's nothing at all, and it's a little bit more accurate to how you cut it. So these are very particular in how you create these shapes. So let's get on to the ellipse tool or oval tool. You can drag out what you want. If you want it to be a perfect circle, make sure that you're dragging it out holding shift, and you can select the whole thing. You can recolor it just like all the others. Now, once you get this, you can also do the same thing. You can separate parts of it, use them different sections. Same thing with the selection tool. You can warp and reshape this however you need to. A lot more controls on an oval. So clear that out. Let's get into the polystar tool. When I drag out this, you're going to notice that it only does like a polygon, pentagon in this case. And you'll notice over here in the properties panel, you have options. And then you can change your options to polygon with maybe you want it to have 10 sides. Click OK, and you can drag out a new one with 10 sides on it. Let's say I wanted to, let me Control Z out of those few things that I just did. And let's change my options to a star. And I can put, let's say I want a 20-sided star. And click OK, drag this out, and there we go. I can also double click this. I can change the stroke to make it a little bit more defined, change the color, however I feel I need to, and everything is kind of customized. Something else you'll notice is that when I overlap this object with my line that I previously did, you're going to see that it reacts to the shapes that were previously drawn on that on this art or on this stage, almost called it an artboard. And so when that happens, it's because everything is on the same layer right now. So if I were to undo that, let me go back in time, Control and Z and out. There's my squiggle again. Let me go down here, add another layer in my timeline, and it's just like layers in Photoshop. Now I can go back to my polystar tool, my options, got my star. Let's draw this out. There's no effect. So now I can move this object right here without there being any kind of changes to my objects in the background. So just a little tip, if you're getting frustrated with some objects interfering with others, try separating them by layers. Pencil tool. This is a stroke tool, so you're going to notice that it will only apply, and it also tries to fix your shapes. So if you're not good at drawing perfect circles or straight edges, the pencil tool will help you out with that. Same thing, color, stroke, style, change the width of it. So if you wanted to draw out different types or different styles of lines, you can do that. Paintbrush tool, it's a little bit different because you can get into more artsy types of brushes. So over here off to the side, you have brush library, and you can select some of these different artist style brushes or pattern brushes. Double click over here, you'll see it show up in your style. And then as you start to brush, let me change it so it's a little bit more visible. You'll see that style appear here as well. And that is also a stroke tool. You have the plain brush tool, which is just essentially that's all it is. You can adjust the size here either in the properties panel. You can use the brackets on your keyboard, right and left brackets, to change the size. And it basically creates a solid brush. There's no art style to it really. It's just a thicker way, but it's different than the pencil tool and the other paintbrush tool because this is a fill tool. It's not a stroke. And so there's certain things you can do and animate with this type of a tool than with one of these. So let me clear those out. Bone tool we'll get to in the next section. Paint bucket tool. You'll notice that if I go to paint bucket my stage, nothing happens because the paint bucket tool only likes to paint in fill areas. So when I click inside a fill area, not a stroke area, it will fill in those spaces. So I can change, that is really a gross color. So let me change that. Let's find something else. Yeah. So if I go to change these, it's because I'm filling in the insides of a shape. Same thing here. I have a border, I can fill it in. So you'll notice that in some cases, you go to draw a shape, and it doesn't quite, maybe you don't notice it, but it doesn't quite fill all the way. You're not going to be able to fill that in with this tool. And so certain shapes you can fill in. Some shapes that you draw might look like they're closed, but they're not really. And you can adjust how your paint bucket tool acts based on the gap size. And so you can tell it to close in larger gaps or don't close in gaps at all. So this paint bucket tool actually has options that you can work with. This is an ink bottle tool. And so with this tool, you can change, and it acts basically on its own style. Already had some weird settings there. You can fill in the, it affects the stroke of your objects. And so I have it set to a certain size, certain shape, and so I can go back and just affect the stroke of certain things. Eyedropper tool is just for picking color. So if I wanted to pick a color from here, I can say, oh, I really want to use this black, and it will change it here. Eraser tool. It's not like other eraser tools. You do have certain settings here. You have circle and square erasers, but you're going to notice that you're limited in size as far as how your eraser tool, how large it gets. So don't expect to be able to just swipe over everything with a large eraser brush, because that's not going to be how it works with this program. The width tool, if I go to choose an object that is a stroke, let's see, like this one here, I can take that and drag it along the edges and reshape that stroke in different ways. So that is pretty much the major tools that we're working with here. And we'll see you next time. We'll start animating our first little character. Thank you.